And welcome to The Seed. It is really great to have you with us today.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I'm really looking forward to this one.
Same here. So on this show, our entire goal, our mission really, is to plant these high-value insights, right? Things that can actually grow into serious, tangible advantages for you if you're out there operating an e-commerce store or, selling online through platforms like Shopify.
Right, because the landscape is it's always shifting.
It is constantly shifting, and today we are jumping into a really fascinating deep dive. We're looking at a source text that focuses on what they call the evolution of authority.
Which sounds very academic, I know, but it is incredibly practical.
Oh, completely. Because the main thesis here, and this is what we're going to unpack, is that authority in our society has just really rapidly and quietly shifted. It used to be held by accountable human institutions, and now...
Now it's held by opaque engagement optimizing algorithms.
Exactly. Completely invisible code. So we're going to cover all of it. We're looking at the invisible rules dictating what your customers actually see online. We'll trace how authority shifted from, the printing press all the way to your social feed.
We'll also get into the hidden biases in algorithmic curation, which is huge.
Yeah, and the reality of filter bubbles, how they shape consumer behavior, and even the impending global regulations that are coming down the pipeline.
A lot of ground to cover, but it's essential.
It really is. Because, look, here is why you, the listener, need to care about this right now. If you're a Shopify merchant, the algorithm is your ultimate gatekeeper.
Yeah, it's the landlord of the internet.
The landlord. I love that. It decides whether your specific product reaches a buyer's screen or if it just, dies in total obscurity. So understanding these automated decision makers, it's not just some fun theory. It's the actual fundamental infrastructure of online sales today.
Absolutely. To understand how to sell online right now, we basically first have to look at who, or I guess what, is actually making the purchasing decisions for consumers.
Right, because you might think you're selling to a human being, but you're not. Let's look at the sheer scale of algorithmic exposure from the text. I mean, the statistics are just wild.
They really are.
Like Netflix. Over 80% of views on Netflix come from their recommendations, not from someone actually typing a movie title into a search bar. 80%.
And if you look at Amazon, which is obviously massive for e-commerce, roughly 35% of their total revenue is driven strictly by its recommendation algorithm.
Wait, 35%?
Yeah, 35. It's not a human going, I need this exact brand of spatula. It's the machine saying, hey, buy this spatula, and people do.
That is, wow. And then you have Google, right? Processing, 8.5 billion searches a day?
8.5 billion daily, and their ranking decisions literally shape reality for those users.
Right. So, tying this directly back to your Shopify store, if you're listening, the algorithm is, what did Tim Wu call it in the text?
A technological prosthesis.
Yes, a technological prosthesis. Consumers don't even actively choose to consult an algorithm anymore. It's just the environment they swim in. Your customers are discovering your products through a machine's decision multiple times before they even eat lunch.
Exactly. It's the water we're swimming in.
Okay, let's unpack this because I want to use an analogy here. It's kind of like you own this beautiful, perfectly curated boutique on a really busy street, right?
Okay, I'm picturing it.
But there's a robot standing in a corner. And this robot is literally blindfolding 90% of the pedestrians walking by. And it only guides the remaining 10% into your store. And it only picks the 10% that it mathematically calculates will buy something.
That is actually a great way to visualize it.
But here's my pushback. If 35% of Amazon's revenue is algorithmic, is the customer even making a choice anymore? I mean, are merchants just selling directly to the algorithm?
Well, what's fascinating here is that we really have to break down this shift in authority. I mean, we need to define what authority actually means in this context.
Right, because it's different from just having power.
Exactly. The text references Robert Dahl, the political scientist. He separates power from authority. Power is just forcing someone to do something. But authority is the recognized right to make decisions that others accept as legitimate.
Accept as legitimate. So there's a level of, inherent trust there.
Yes, exactly. Today, a user types something into a search bar, and they just accept that the top result is the best choice. They accept a recommended product as the legitimate option without having any idea why it's there. The machine has the authority now.
Wow. Okay, so now that we've established this, immense power these algorithms hold over an e-commerce business today, we need to rewind a bit.
We do, yeah.
Because we need to understand how a string of computer code actually earned this level of authority in the first place.
Right. How did merchants lose the map? It's a historical shift. We went from human scarcity to digital feeds.
Let's trace that timeline, because it starts way back with oral cultures, right?
Right. In oral cultures, authority was held by elders.
Mm.
And it was based on memory. They remembered what happened, so they held the authority.
So authority was basically human scarcity. Then we moved to the medieval Catholic Church.
And they controlled literacy, right? They controlled the physical archives.
Exactly. Think about Galileo's trial. It wasn't really just about astronomy or the telescope.
Wait, really? Because we always learned it was about the Earth moving around the sun?
I mean, it was, but structurally, it was about who gets to determine the truth. It was a challenge to the church's monopoly on legitimate information.
Oh, that makes so much sense. But then Johannes Gutenberg comes along.
Right, the printing press. And he just breaks that monopoly completely open.
Because suddenly making a book goes from taking a year in a monastery to just being an industrial process.
Right.
Which is why Martin Luther's Reformation was really, it was essentially a massive media event, right?
Yes. Driven by cheap distribution, the technology completely shifted who could hold authority. Okay, so fast forward to the 20th century, the broadcast era, radio and television, and suddenly things centralize again.
Because of the infrastructure costs, yeah.
Right, like, why was Walter Cronkite the most trusted man in America? It wasn't just because he had a nice voice.
It was because the structural cost of broadcasting credentialed him. You needed federal licenses, transmission towers, millions of dollars.
So just being on the television screen meant you were vetted, the barrier to entry gave you authority.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But then 1993 happens. Tim Berners-Lee builds the early web, and he builds it around the hyperlink.
Hyperlink, which is totally decentralized.
Right, it's pluralistic. Authority back then was earned via community reputation. Niche forums, direct links, logs.
Yeah, for anyone who remembers early e-commerce, it was incredible. You could set up an online store and you relied on direct links. You got featured on a blog, people shared your URL. It was decentralized word of mouth.
But that era ended. Around 2006, we enter the platform era.
Right. Facebook, Twitter, Google buying YouTube, and the internet centralizes again.
The feed replaced the hyperlink. And that is the crucial pivot point.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Let me use another analogy. It's like the early web was an open farmer's market. Anyone could set up a stall, people wander around. But the platform era, it's like a massive enclosed indoor mall.
Yes, a walled garden.
And there's a single bouncer at the door who decides who gets to walk past your specific Shopify store. And e-commerce brand's authority today is entirely dictated by a non-human curator.
Which completely changes the game for a merchant.
But let me push back on this a little. Are we maybe romantically overvaluing the Cronkite era? I mean, wasn't the early internet's promise of like anyone can sell anything to anyone, wasn't that actually fulfilled by these big platforms, even if they use algorithms?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's a bit of a paradox. Yes, access was totally democratized. Anyone can open a store today in 5 minutes. But distribution became centralized.
Access versus distribution. That's a great distinction.
Right? You can exist online, but getting seen, that's controlled. And the key difference between Walter Cronkite and the feed is accountability.
Accountability.
Yes, you knew who Cronkite was. If he lied, he could be fired or sued. You have absolutely no idea who or what is curating your modern social feed. It's unaccountable.
So if non-human curators are in charge of this digital mall, we really need to understand the rules they follow to grant visibility. What is the actual engine of the feed?
It all comes down to understanding what an algorithm is at its core. It's essentially a set of mathematical rules observing past behavior to predict future actions.
Okay, but what are they optimizing for? Because if I'm selling shoes, I want them to optimize for sales.
And that's the disconnect. You have to look at the business model of the platforms themselves. They generate revenue through ads, which requires users to spend time on the platform.
Right, time on platform.
The single absolute optimization target for the machine is engagement.
Just keeping you scrolling. Okay, but I've heard this called the black box problem. Why is it a black box if we know it just wants engagement?
Because of how deep learning and neural networks actually function. They are so complex that even the engineers who design them cannot explicitly read or explain the logic of a decision.
Wait, really? The creators don't even know how it works?
Not at a granular level, no. It's called the explainability problem. The system adjusts millions of variables autonomously to reach the engagement goal. It's technically inscrutable. And on top of that, you have commercial opacity.
Meaning they legally protect it.
Exactly. Things like Google's PageRank or Facebook's newsfeed are highly guarded trade secrets.
Okay, so tying this to e-commerce, this is incredibly vital. The platforms are not optimizing to show the absolute best product to the customer. And they certainly aren't optimizing to show the most ethical Shopify store.
No, they don't care about quality in a human sense.
They only care about whatever keeps the user on the app. So if a really controversial, poorly made product keeps people arguing in the comments longer than my high-quality product,
The algorithm will promote the controversial one, 100%.
it's like hiring a salesperson for your physical store, but their only metric for success is keeping the customer physically trapped in the building for as long as possible.
That's horrifying, but
Mm.
accurate.
Right, even if it means showing them outrageous things instead of the shoes they came in to buy.
Yeah.
But let me argue the other side again. If they optimize for engagement and a customer is super engaged, sees my ad, and buys my product, isn't that just a win-win? Why is this black box such a huge problem if the cash register is still ringing for the merchant?
It's a problem because of the danger of authority without accountability. What happens when the system adjusts a parameter and your sales are crushed overnight?
Oh, right, the dreaded algorithm update.
Exactly. When a ranking decision destroys a merchant's livelihood, there's literally no one to appeal to. You can't call up a neural network and ask why your ad reach dropped by 80% today. It's an entirely unauditable environment.
That is terrifying for a business owner. Okay, so we've established that algorithms are blindly chasing engagement inside this black box. But what happens when that blind, mathematically neutral system is trained on deeply flawed human data?
This is where we get into the structural nature of algorithmic bias, and it's a huge issue.
Right, because humans are biased and we create the data. Let's talk about the research from the MIT Media Lab, Joy Buolamwini's work.
Yes. She did this incredible research looking at facial recognition software. And just as a factual case study of systemic outcomes, the error rates were staggering.
What were the numbers?
For lighter-skinned men, the error rate was under 1%, but for darker-skinned women, the error rate shot up to 35%.
Wow, 35% error. Because the historical training data just lacked diversity, right?
Exactly. The engineers didn't program it to be biased. The system just learned from a data set that was overwhelmingly filled with lighter-skinned faces.
So it's a structural blind spot. But the danger is that these aren't seen as flawed tools. An algorithm carries this, implicit claim of mathematical neutrality.
Yes, people assume math equals objective truth, which makes an algorithmic decision much harder to contest than if a human made the same biased choice.
And this causes real-world chaos for brands. The text brings up the 2017 YouTube advertiser boycott as a perfect example.
Right, and again, looking at this purely as a factual event, YouTube's algorithm was optimizing ad placement based on contextual signals to keep people watching, and it did this completely without human review.
Because it's a black box chasing engagement, so it ends up placing ads from mainstream family-friendly brands right next to extremist content, because the extremist content was highly engaging.
Exactly. The brands were accidentally subsidizing extremism because the machine didn't understand the context. It only understood watch time.
So bringing this back to e-commerce applications, this is a direct flashing red warning sign for merchants running automated ad campaigns.
It absolutely is.
If you're using AI targeting, the historical data it relies on might inherently exclude demographics that would actually love your product, simply because they weren't well represented in the training set. You're losing money to a math error.
And beyond that, your brand's reputation could be severely damaged. If a black box ad network slaps your Shopify store's logo next to highly controversial content just because it gets clicks, that's your brand safety on the line.
It's like using a supposedly perfect automated compass to navigate a ship, but the compass was built using a map drawn by someone who thought the world was flat.
That's exactly it. The tool works perfectly, but the foundation is flawed.
But wait, the platforms didn't intentionally program the bias, right? It just learned from us. So as a merchant who's just trying to sell, coffee or apparel, how am I supposed to fix a structural problem built into the code of the internet?
Well, this raises an important question. And the answer is, you don't fix the code. You can't.
Yeah.
But you absolutely must account for it.
Account for it how?
By not putting all your eggs in one automated basket. It really highlights why reliance on a single automated ad platform is highly risky for both brand safety and your overall market reach. You have to diversify.
Right. Okay. So this engagement-driven biased optimization affects who sees your ads, but it also fundamentally alters the actual reality your customers live in, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely. This brings us to the concept of the filter bubble.
Right. Eli Pariser's concept from 2011. Walk us through that.
The basic idea of the filter bubble is that personalization algorithms remove the friction of contradiction. They figure out what you like, and they only show you that.
So you never see anything that challenges you.
Exactly. Now, to be fair to the academic discourse, the research here is a bit contested. Some studies show a huge reduction in exposure to cross-cutting content, while others say the effect is actually smaller than Pariser claimed.
So the scale is debated, but the mechanism is real.
Yes. The key takeaway, regardless of the scale, is this. Recommendation systems are absolutely not designed for diverse perspectives. If you see diverse breadth of content, it's totally incidental. You and I could search the same thing and receive entirely different facts.
And if you're selling online, this is wild to think about. You have to realize there's no longer a mass market. There's no shared reality anymore. Your customers are deeply siloed.
Highly fragmented.
Right. So a marketing message that resonates perfectly in one algorithmic bubble might be completely incomprehensible in another, or it might just be totally invisible.
Which leads to the circularity problem.
Yes, the circularity problem. I was going to ask about that. So what does this all mean practically? It's like having a million tiny parallel universes. In universe A, your brand is super famous, but in universe B, the customer has literally never seen your brand and never will, just because they didn't click on a related video 3 years ago.
Exactly. Their past behavior rigidly restricts their future product discovery.
But wait, let me pause here. Isn't hyper-personalization exactly what a merchant wants? Like, if the bubble only ever shows my coffee beans to completely coffee-obsessed people, isn't the filter bubble actually my best friend?
I mean, in a very narrow, short-term sense, yes, it can drive conversions.
Right.
But the danger of the circularity problem is that if your product is trapped in a specific behavioral loop, you cannot achieve organic growth outside of it.
Oh, you hit a wall.
You hit a massive wall because the system predicts preferences based on past choices it already made for the user. It locks your potential customer base into this rigid ceiling. You can't break out of the bubble to find new customers organically.
Wow. Okay, so merchants are caught in these black boxes dealing with biased data trapped in filter bubbles. There is a massive power imbalance between a Shopify store owner and the platforms. So what is the world doing to rein in this unaccountable authority?
Well, the global regulatory landscape is trying, but it is severely lagging behind the deployment of the technology.
Because the tech moves so fast.
Right. But the most comprehensive attempt right now is the EU AI Act of 2024.
Right, Europe is really leading the charge here. And they took an interesting approach, didn't they?
They did. Instead of trying to regulate the specific technology which changes every week, they categorize risk. So they mandate transparency and human oversight for high-risk applications.
High risk being things like employment screening, credit scoring, law enforcement.
Exactly. If AI makes a decision there, humans have to be in the loop. And they outright prohibited things like social scoring and real-time facial recognition in public.
So that's Europe. What about the U.S. landscape?
It's a lot messier. The Algorithmic Accountability Act has been proposed since, 2019, but it hasn't passed. The Federal Trade Commission does try to act on deceptive practices, but there is no comprehensive framework.
And other countries are active too, right? The UK, Australia, Canada, Brazil, but it's all disjointed, which creates a huge jurisdictional problem.
It's a nightmare because American tech companies operate globally. If a European user interacts with a US platform, they get EU rules, but enforcing that relies on really tricky international cooperation.
And for e-commerce applications, Shopify merchants operate globally too. If you use an AI plugin for dynamic pricing or credit checks or even targeted advertising in Europe, you are subject to the EU AI Act.
You are. And the lack of U.S. regulation means that domestically, you're just largely at the mercy of the platforms. So making international compliance a core part of your strategy is actually a competitive advantage now.
It feels like we're trying to write speed limits for flying cars using a rulebook from the horse and buggy days.
That's a perfect analogy.
But honestly, if algorithms evolve every 6 months, aren't these laws obsolete the second they're printed? How can a government regulate a neural network it doesn't even understand?
That is the exact warning in the source text. Regulations that focus on techniques become obsolete instantly, which is why the EU Act focuses on outcomes and risk domains rather than the code itself.
That makes sense.
But the core issue remains the accountability gap. In traditional media, if someone messed up, they could be sued or pressured. An algorithm simply adjusts its weights and continues running. There's no one to sue.
Okay, so since regulations are super slow and platforms are completely opaque, we really need to arrive at the most crucial part for our listeners. What can you actually do to survive and thrive in this environment today?
The answer the text provides is developing what's called algorithmic literacy.
Algorithmic literacy. Let's define that because it's not about learning to code, right?
Not at all. You don't need to learn Python. It's developing a practical mental model of what these systems optimize for, knowing that they optimize for engagement, not for your long-term health or business stability.
Right. And a big part of algorithmic literacy is the practice of introducing friction,
Yes, friction is key.
like searching across multiple platforms to compare results, treating your personalized feed as a condition to be managed, not just a neutral background of reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And institutionally, journalists, regulators, and schools need to understand these systems deeply too. But for the individual, it's about active management.
For a Shopify seller, algorithmic literacy is literally your competitive edge. It means not relying entirely on Meta or Google feeds for your traffic.
Right. You can't just trust the black box.
It means actively managing your brand's presence across diverse channels. You have to introduce friction into your own marketing dependencies. You have to understand that top-ranking competitors are often there just because they matched an intent model, not necessarily because they actually have a better product than you.
That's a crucial realization.
Yeah.
Levels a playing field in your mind.
It's kind of like realizing you're in the Matrix, but instead of dodging bullets, you're dodging personalized search rankings. You have to actively wake yourself and your business up.
I love that. Yes.
But what does introducing friction actually look like for a business? Does that mean actively spending money on less efficient platforms just to diversify? Like taking a hit on ROI just to spread the risk?
It means moving from a passive recipient to an active participant. That changes your relationship to the system's authority. And yes, practically, it means diversifying traffic sources.
So building up newsletters, direct partnerships, affiliate.
Exactly. Because when an algorithmic update happens, and it will happen, your business doesn't just disappear overnight. You own the relationship with the customer, not the algorithm.
Okay, this has been an incredible deep dive. Let's do a quick recap.
Sounds good.
Authority has completely shifted from humans we could hold accountable to black box algorithms optimizing strictly for engagement. For online sellers, these algorithms are the invisible gatekeepers determining your success.
And they carry historical biases, and they lock customers into filter bubbles.
Right, and they operate largely outside of any cohesive government regulation right now. So your absolute best defense is algorithmic literacy. Understand the game so you can actively manage your business's destiny by owning your audience.
That sums it up perfectly.
Before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final kind of provocative thought based on the source material. Something we didn't really touch on, but it's worth mulling over.
Let's hear it.
If our algorithms are constantly learning from our past behavior to predict our future, and as merchants, we are increasingly using AI to predict what products we should make next, are we eventually going to end up in a closed loop?
Oh, wow.
Right, where AI is designing products solely to be sold to other AI recommendation engines, leaving actual human desire completely out of the equation.
That is a wild thought to end on.
Something to think about while you're checking your conversion rates today. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive on the seed. We wish you a fantastic, successful week of selling online. And remember, keep questioning the feed. See you next time.